The printer wheezed out the last rule card. Its mechanical sigh a familiar companion to my solitude. I peeled the lamination film smooth with the edge of my credit card, the plastic cool against my thumb. 7 rules. Not too many to seem paranoid. Not too few to matter. 5 years of this business, and I'd gotten it down to a science. Laminated so they couldn't claim water damage. Placed strategically so they couldn't say they never saw them. A shield against liability, yes, but also against something else. My phone lit up on the kitchen counter. A jarring burst of light in the dim cabin. New reservation. The Ortiz family. Denver address. Checking in tomorrow. For a full week at Cabin 7. 2 adults, 2 teenagers. October tourists. They were either hardcore hikers chasing the last blaze of autumn, or families squeezing in one final trip before ski season. Teenagers usually meant the latter. I loaded my truck with the usual supplies: toolkit, spare door locks, firewood, and the cards. Always the cards. The drive up to Cabin 7 took 40 minutes when the roads were dry, but October was anyone's guess. My grandfather's watch, heavy and cold on my wrist, read 2:47 p.m. as I turned onto the final stretch of dirt road. Still plenty of daylight. Too much daylight sometimes. Fresh elk tracks crossed the porch, pressed deep into the mud from last night's rain. Big bull, probably 700 pounds from the spread of the hooves. I followed them around to the back, where they'd trampled Patricia Henderson's autumn mums. She'd complain about that when she got back from Florida. But something else caught my eye. The kitchen window latch hung loose, metal bent outward. Wind damage, maybe, though we hadn't had anything stronger than a breeze all week. I added it to my mental repair list and shouldered the door open. The wood always swelled this time of year, but this felt different. Inside, I went through my routine. Rule card on the kitchen counter propped against the coffee maker where the parents would see it first. Another on the hallway table. One in each bedroom on the nightstand. The teenagers would probably use them as coasters, but at least I'd done my part. I restocked the firewood bin, checked the generator, tested the carbon monoxide detector. Standard stuff. The kind of things that actually kept people safe, unlike the last 3 rules on those cards. But you couldn't very well write, "Don't let the thing that lives in these woods into your house," without losing customers. Not yet, anyway. Back on the porch, I nearly missed them. 3 parallel gouges in the railing, cutting through the weather-treated wood down to raw pine. Each line ran about 8 inches long, spaced like fingers, but too wide for any human hand, too deliberate for a bear marking territory. Bears scraped, they didn't carve. I crouched down, running my finger along one groove. The edges were clean, not splintered. Whatever made these had sharp edges, not claws. The wood inside looked fresh, maybe 2 days old, 3 at most. I pulled out my phone and took a few pictures, checking the angle of the light to catch the depth. My grandfather had sketched marks just like these in his journal, always showing up in October before the first real snow. He tried to find a pattern: moon phases, temperature drops, migration schedules. Never could pin it down. The marks just appeared when they appeared, usually right before things got interesting. I left my business card on the kitchen counter, with my cell number circled twice in Sharpie. The landline worked most of the time, but cell service was spotty up here. If the Ortiz family needed me, they'd need to be creative. The drive back down the mountain was quieter than usual. No birds, no squirrels chattering. Even the wind had died down to nothing. That kind of stillness meant weather coming, or something else. I'd learned not to guess which. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my own driveway. Text from Derek Ortiz asking about hiking trails. I sat in the truck for a minute, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I could recommend the tourist loops, Beaver Creek, the Lower Meadow Trail, safe, pretty boring. Or I could tell him about the real trails, the ones that showed you why people used to worship mountains. I went with middle ground, suggested Crystal Lake Trail, moderate difficulty, great views. Added a reminder about afternoon thunderstorms and the temperature dropping 20 degrees after sunset. Didn't mention that the trail passed right by the old mine shaft, where hiker Sarah Chin had heard her dead sister calling her name last summer. She'd almost walked right in before her husband grabbed her. Inside my cabin, I heated up leftover chili and pulled out my grandfather's journal. His handwriting got shaky toward the end, but the entry from October 1952 was still clear. He'd been younger than me when he wrote it, just married, trying to make the rental business work. October 18th, 1952. Tall visitor came to cabin 7 last night. Haj's family from Texas heard knocking at 2 a.m. Man outside, very polite, said he was lost. Haj's almost opened the door but remembered the rules. Visitor knew their names, all 4 of them. Even the baby they called by a nickname. Stayed until dawn, knocking every few minutes. Found hoof prints in the morning, not elk. Not anything I can name. The next line was the one that stuck with me, the one that made me double-check my locks even now. It knew our names before we spoke them. I closed the journal and washed my bowl. The Ortiz family would arrive tomorrow, probably around noon if they left Denver after breakfast. They'd laugh at some of the rules, follow most of them, think I was a bit odd, but harmless. The teenagers would complain about the Wi-Fi. The parents would love the view, and if they were lucky, that would be all. They'd leave in a week with photos and memories and stories about the quirky mountain man who ran their rental. If they weren't lucky, well, that's what the rules were for. I locked the deadbolt, then the chain, checked that the windows were latched. My grandfather had been paranoid about entries, doors, windows, even the chimney flue. After what I'd seen 3 winters ago, standing at my back door in a torn park ranger uniform that hadn't been worn since 1978, asking so politely to come in from the cold, I understood why. The motion sensor light clicked on outside. Probably a deer, usually was, usually. I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed, leaving the porch light on. Tomorrow would be a long day. A very long day. The Ortiz family's SUV pulled up right at noon, just like I'd predicted. Denver plates, luggage carrier on top, bikes on the back, the full suburban adventure package. I stayed on the porch, watching them pile out and stretch. The dad, Derek, moved with that confident energy successful guys always had, already scanning the property like he was evaluating code. His wife, Patricia, helped a sullen teenage girl from the back seat, while a taller blonde girl emerged from the other side, taking photos with her phone. Joey Bridges. Derek extended his hand, firm grip, direct eye contact. Software engineer, definitely. They always shook hands like they were closing deals. Beautiful place you've got here. Thanks. You must be the Ortiz family. Welcome to Cabin 7. Thank you for accommodating us on short notice. I'm Sarah. This is our daughter, Claire. The dark-haired girl barely glanced up from her phone. And Ellie, our exchange student from Germany. Ellie stepped forward with European formality, actually shaking my hand. Thank you for having us, Mr. Bridges. Just Joey's fine. Let me help with the bags. We've got it. Hey, those rule cards you left. Pretty comprehensive. Liability protection. Some of it. The mountains killed 3 hikers just this year. Weather turns fast up here. 3? What happened? Hypothermia for 2 of them. Thought they could handle an afternoon storm in shorts and t-shirts. The 3rd fell off Crystal Ridge trying to get a selfie. The rules might seem excessive, but they're based on experience. Even the one about not answering the door at night? What do you have? Mountain serial killers? We get transients sometimes. Hikers who got turned around, people looking for empty cabins to squat in. Most are harmless, but at night up here, you can't tell the difference until it's too late. Makes sense. Better safe than sorry. Ellie had wandered to the kitchen, reading the laminated card I'd left by the coffee maker. What does this mean? Respect the mountain as you would respect the sea. Locals have learned the mountain has moods. Sounds mystical, but it's practical advice. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't ignore warning signs. Don't assume you're in control just because you have GPS and Gore-Tex. Like the sea, in Germany, we have similar sayings about the Black Forest. Sarah was already checking the locks on the back door, thorough and methodical. Everything seemed secure. The previous guests didn't report any problems. The Millers left 2 days ago. No issues. I didn't mention the bent window latch I'd fixed, or the elk tracks that looked almost deliberate in their path across the porch. They spent the next hour settling in while I showed them the generator, the firewood supply, and the emergency radio. Normal stuff. Derek made jokes about the Wi-Fi speed. Claire complained about the cell service. Sarah asked about the nearest hospital. 40 minutes in good weather, I told her, which was why the emergency kit was so well stocked. I was halfway down the mountain when my phone rang. Hey, quick question. We're hearing these sounds, like howling, but they sound almost human. October, right on schedule. Elk. Rutting season started last week. The bulls make some pretty weird calls trying to attract mates. Elk, of course. City boy mistake. Happens all the time. They can sound eerily human, especially when the sound bounces off the canyon walls. That's it. That's what we're hearing. I was already turning the truck around. Be there in 20. The family stood clustered on the porch when I arrived. Sarah's arm around Claire, Ellie recording video on her phone. The forest had gone quiet. That unnatural stillness that meant something had spooked the small animals. It stopped right before you got here. Came from that direction. Lasted maybe 30 seconds each time. I walked the porch perimeter, checking for signs. Nothing at first. Then I saw them. 3 parallel scratches on the pine tree beside their porch, right at eye level, fresh enough that sap still beaded in the grooves. My chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Probably a bear. They mark territory sometimes, especially if they smell food. Those don't look like claw marks. She was right. Too clean, too precise, too intentional. But saying that wouldn't help anyone sleep tonight. Bears' claws can leave surprising patterns depending on the angle. Same spacing as the ones on the porch railing. Same depth. I'll add some deterrent spray around the cabin tomorrow. Should keep them away. We saw eyes. During our hike, something was watching us. We saw reflections, honey. Could have been anything. They followed us. When we moved, they moved. I saw them too. Yellow, like a cat, but higher up. Too high for a mountain lion. Every instinct screamed at me to tell them more, to warn them properly. But direct truth had backfired before. The Chens had left immediately after I'd been too honest, and they'd broken down on the mountain road at dusk. Sometimes staying in a protected cabin was safer than fleeing in panic. Lots of wildlife up here. Listen, you've got my cell number, right? Not just the landline. Programmed it in? Good. Cell service is spotty, but texts usually get through eventually. And remember, stay inside after dark. We will. I gave them the emergency flashlight from my truck and reminded them about the generator's quirks. The marks on the door seemed to pulse in my peripheral vision, but I didn't look at them again. The drive down was slower this time. I kept checking the mirrors, watching for movement in the trees. At the turnoff to the old family cemetery, I made a decision and pulled over. The cemetery hadn't been used since 1943, just 12 graves surrounded by a rusted iron fence. My great-grandfather's stone stood in the back corner, the inscription barely legible after decades of weather. But the marks above his name remained sharp. 3 parallel lines cut deep into the granite. My father had shown them to me when I was 15. Said they'd appeared the night after the burial. No explanation, no theory. Just another mystery to add to the collection. I traced them with my finger, feeling the impossible precision of the cuts. Warning or claim, protection or possession. My phone buzzed. Sarah. The doors, do they lock properly? Some of these old cabins have settling issues. I texted back. All locks replaced last year. Deadbolts are solid. Windows too. Good to know, thank you. She was worried, but trying not to show it. Smart woman. The worried ones usually listen to the rules better. The sun was already dropping behind the western peaks, painting everything orange and red. In 2 hours, it would be full dark. The Ortiz family would be inside, doors locked, probably making dinner and trying to treat this like a normal vacation. I hoped they'd follow the rules, all of them, especially Rule 4. The marks on my great-grandfather's headstone caught the last light of day, throwing shadows that looked almost like writing. But that was impossible. Stone didn't change. Marks carved in 1943 couldn't form new patterns, could they? I got back in the truck and headed home, leaving the dead to their secrets and hoping the living would keep theirs locked away until morning. I jerked awake to my phone buzzing against the nightstand, the screen showing 2:03 a.m. Derek Ortiz. My stomach dropped as I grabbed it. Joey, someone's knocking on our door. Don't answer it. We weren't going to, but... Jesus, there it is again. Back bedroom. Sarah's got the girls. Should I call 911? They're 40 minutes away on a good day. I grabbed my keys and the rifle from above the door, the one with silver bullets I'd never tested. I'm coming up. Stay on the line. My truck fired up on the second try. It stopped. Someone's talking. Hello. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm lost. I took a wrong turn on the trail. Please. I just need directions back to the parking area. Don't. A sudden sharp, wet thud against the door. A choked gasp from Derek. Then nothing. Just the static hum of the phone. I screamed his name, but only the wind answered. The distant, mournful howl began again, closer this time, and then faded into the sound of my truck speeding up, tires screaming. I burst out of the truck, rifle in hand, the silver bullets feeling heavier than lead. The cabin was dark, silent, too silent. The porch light was off. I could see the faint outline of the front door. It was closed, but something was wrong. The air was thick with a metallic scent, like old blood and damp earth. I crept closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. I reached the door. my hand trembling as I touched the cold wood. It was slick. I pulled my hand back, and in the faint moonlight, I saw it. A dark, viscous smear. Not blood, not exactly. Something else. Something that smelled of the woods, of decay, and of something ancient. I froze. The growl was unmistakable. And the whimper. It was too faint to be sure, but it sounded like Claire. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. It knew our names before we spoke them. And the rule: don't let the thing that lives in these woods into your house. A single sharp crack from inside the cabin, like bone breaking, then silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. I stood there, rifle still raised, staring at the dark cabin. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I knew what had happened. I knew what the rules were for. And I knew that sometimes, even the best rules aren't enough. The Ortiz family had learned that the hard way. And I was still learning. The distant, mournful howl returned, closer now, and this time, it was joined by a chorus of other, equally unsettling sounds. The wind picked up, rattling the cabin. The mountains always collect their due. And sometimes they send a messenger to remind you. A messenger that knows your name and waits, always waits. A final, chilling, perfectly spaced knock. Join our growing YouTube family. Subscribe now and be part of every exciting moment. Ever had a similar encounter or strange moment? We'd be thrilled if you'd share it with us in the comments. Who knows, your story might be featured next.